And we are live talking about Skeleton Crew Season 1, Episode 3. How are you,
Good in
Mandalore?
yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about the show because I will be honest, this week surprised me a lot. I still enjoyed the show. Revert back to last week. I liked both first two episodes. They were really good. And now we are with episode 3, and they kind of fixed up some of the issues I had. Um, like, why did the Jedi waited to escape? It was answered like almost the first scene or two.
And if he's a
And
Jedi.
yeah, he's not a Jedi. And
Exactly.
yeah, we spoiled the entire thing. So that's your warning. If you don't want spoiler, well, click away the video, and now we shall talk. We shall talk. So I was surprised. Another issue I had with the first episode was the kid with the glasses. The fourth kid that was just like a plot device. I feel like this week she kind of got fleshed out a bit more. She seems like the brain of the team now, and she's the most how to how can we word it? She seems the most cautious of the bunch,
And most
and
logical.
yeah, the most logical. And she was like the first one that was seeing through the bullshit. The guy was pulling Mr. Fake Jedi. Um so yeah, this week I had no issues whatsoever, and I unfortunately don't have a lot to say, and that's the sad part. So
Well,
I'll let you talk a bit now, Dart.
well, yeah, it was a simple episode, and they're not horribly long. And it was only compared to the last week's two. This time it was only a one episode. Yeah, the two things I brought up, the two questions I brought up, were answered almost right off the bat, which bothered you when I pointed them out. Was why didn't he escape? And I was right. Where like there's certain things that's very predictable. I've got feelings about other things which I won't spoil because I want to see if they happen. Yeah, the reason he didn't escape was because where would he have gone? He's on a thing full of people who dislike him, and he's probably screwed over. So unless he was going to try and steal a ship, and most of those ships usually have crew on them, as we saw from the last episode, the last episode when he was trying to steal the robot, or that the one guy sort of said, "Wait, you can't steal that. Maybe I should call the captain." And he called the captain against him, the one guy who he thought was sort of more friendly with him. So there was no point in him doing that. So that explains that part. And he then says, "I never said I was a Jedi." Um, so uh, the interesting things were more like it was more. There seemed to be more going on, but not much to talk about. It's kind of like it's as I've said before. It's an okay show, but it's definitely felt more child. It definitely felt more like one of those kid adventures you'd see on like what was it before Disney Channel, Family Channel, or just you see any of those kid movies and stuff. It felt like that where kids were leading it and they were sort of not in the right place and they're just kind of being. The story doesn't necessarily always fit, but it works. Um, Especially when you saw them sort of reasoning with Jod on the ramp into the ship, and they're trying to say, "Well, we're not doing this until you do the explain this and whatnot." Um, the fact that what was also an interesting thing, and I looked it up briefly, but the name that the owl person used on him, like saying that wasn't the name that he was using currently, was actually a reference to another Star Wars character. Actually, used that name, and the fact that he seems to be sort of like a con man. Like he's not necessarily a pirate. He sort of conned his way into the pirates. Um, his character, if you've ever read the comics, remind me a lot of Dr. Aphra, who says what needs to be said to get what they want. that's the typical of the scoundrel and whatnot. And yeah, like there's definitely more to come to his story. Like his story has not been opened up, but it's a kid show, so it's not going to be anything like too dark. I'm guessing.
Hopefully, otherwise I'll trade
Well, I don't think they
Clash
could. I don't think they will. As mentioned before, as I read going into the next episode, that there was 2 mothers for the Asian child. But again, it wasn't forced. It was kind of just they were there. It wasn't like anything of the show that shall not be named where it was forced in your face. It was just a present thing if you were paying attention.
I didn't even realize it was.
Yeah, like when they all the parents were talking.
Oh.
Again, and that's the thing. Like you either notice it or you don't. I noticed it because I sort of was pointed to it beforehand, and I was expecting it because I read about it. But again, you can have those sort of things, those elements in a show without it being the story revolving around it. They're just like in the 80s and 90s. You would have gay or different minorities, and it wasn't the whole story. Wasn't it? Might have been one episode was based on that due to a learning episode, but the whole thing was just it was in the background. No one cared. No one judged.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of all the animal characters. Like that's one thing that brings it down to more kiddish and silly than a Star Wars show for kids that's more tolerable. It's that the one character was an owl with, and to me, it had a cat face on an owl. Like it wasn't a beak. It more. I'm not sure if that was just me, but it looked very cattish.
I didn't really notice anything. I just thought that was a cool character.
I don't remember how many episodes there are for this series.
8.
8, and we're already 3 in.
Yeah.
So we're next week is half point. So I don't know how exciting the show is going to be. It's like I said, it's an okay show just to put on the background. Like once the show's done, it's just, oh, I've watched the Clone Wars how many times? I've watched the Mandalorian how many times? Let's put something else on the background while I do other things. Throw this on. It's something you can put on, and it's not too kiddie, not too childish, but it's not too distracting.
I must insert something here because I feel like the need to mention this because I think it can add something. I feel like the title, it's a kids show, and I feel like the title doesn't really highlight that much. So maybe the parents might be worried, or they might not even know that this could be for kids and such. So that I think it's a bad marketing move, calling your show Skeleton Crew when it's a kids show like right now.
Well,
I
everything
don't
that's
know.
marketed it has shown children. So I don't think like it's shown like the group of kids. It doesn't even sort of single anyone out. Like it showed Jod Nad and then the kids. So it hasn't even shown anything like too scary, like the droid, who I just learned is being voiced by Nick Frost, which is cool because I like Nick Frost and especially his stuff with Simon Pegg, and Simon Pegg's been in Star Wars. So there's things that they could have shown which would make it seem less child friendly, but it seems. But they can't make it too child friendly because then you get those kiddie cartoon, that one cartoon that they have on Disney Plus, the one with like Yoda and stuff, and the cat character, the teddy bear character, the blue teddy bear, Jedi.
Yeah.
That is specifically for young children. It's marketed. It's complete child. But this one is marketed to young children or slightly older children, not teens necessarily, maybe some teens. But it also has to have some flavor for adults because they know adults are their main
pull.
Is their main income is the adults buying the things for themselves, for collectors, and adults buying things for their kids who also watch the stuff. So it can't be too childish, because then the adults would just go, oh, the kids can watch this, but I'm not going to watch this. I'm not going to collect anything. I'm not going to spend the money on the bigger things. But at the same time, it can't be too adult, because you don't want to go, I can't let my kids watch this. I'm not going to get them anything from this because it's not appropriate for them.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, Disney knows that parents take their kids to watch all the other shows. The kids watch Mandalorian. They market it. The Mandalorian was an adult show, but it definitely had like Grogu and stuff, and marketing and stuff. Kids love the show, so I don't think we have to worry about being too childish, but it's definitely marketed towards the younger age range, but with some for the adults. But again, It's hard to say if the show is actually as good as I'm viewing it, where it's decent, nothing spectacular, nothing to go out your way for, just because of the last project. Because that left such a bad taste. And I'm not even trying to just diss on it this time. I'm just trying to say, on so many levels, and not even just from the agenda that was being clearly pushed, whether you want to debate that or not, for Star Wars lore fans, it was a spit in the face. For the quality, for everything, it was just... And how I talked about originally saying the original sort of talks about the show when the Acolyte was first mentioned, when they mentioned all the Star Wars shows other than the Mandalorian this was probably going to be a story from the Sith side of the story. And it had this is going to be a great story. And then there was too much hype for it. And it just kept getting knocked down. Whereas this show is starring kids. It's a kids show, or starring kids. It knocked your expectation down. After the last show, that knocked your thing down. So you go into it with a completely mediocre, low expectation, so it seems better. So it could be that. It's hard to say if this would have come out before the previous show. Would it be as well? There's always going to be the people who hate anything that's Disney, or who just dislike anything that's not to their taste. And this is one of those shows that's not necessarily to my taste, but I like a little more action. I like a little bit more lore connection, but it's a tolerable show, and I know that sounds like, ooh, great reviews, but it's something that you can put on and watch, and it's not going to be something that you're going to avoid for the most part.
Yeah. I'm with you, and I think I like that show a lot more than you. Do you want to add more before I go on?
Well, one thing I was going to ask you is, do you have it after sort of last time I made hints at what I thought was going to happen this show with explanations, things? Do you have any sort of expectations, or do you have any guesses of what's going to be coming up?
To be honest, none. I'm not as knowledgeable on the extended lore as you. I I don't know. I don't know where the show will go at from here. And expectation wise, I just hope it will remain the same and they won't start having plot hole and bullshit in it. As of right now, everything works very well, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Anything to say?
Oh, and yeah, I completely agree with you. There's not too much going on. It's kind of an episode to episode adventure. Like, it is one of those where the whole season or series, depending on if it gets renewed, is one story being told over multiple episodes. It's not one of those flavors of the week episode where it's every week is another sort of a different adventure where they go exploring to do a different planet or a different sort of thing. But there's not too much going on where you have to sort of, there's nothing to really expect. The only real story that's going on in the background is finding their planet. One, for them to get home, and two, what's going on in that planet. On that planet, as we mentioned before, as we talked about last time, that there's almost one of those perfect suburbia sort of planets. But when you start peeling back the layers and looking and analyzing everything at once, you sort of notice that things aren't perfect. Things are very much controlled and not as they seem. And it's just, all right, when are they going to get to their planet? Are they going to get to their planet? And are they going to beat the pirates or other people to their planet? Because John Nad has the information for it. So it's now, and you can clearly see he's in this for gain. Now, whether it's, as I sort of, again, once I mentioned was, is he a bad guy doing all this, pretending to help them to help himself, and then at the last moment he's going to sacrifice the gain or himself for the kids? Or are they going to, like, it's hard to say where the show's going to go, because I could see this taking a Lost in Space thing where they know they're being followed to the planet, and rather than leading other people to the planet, they sort of throw them out into the middle of nowhere, sort of like Ahsoka, like hit and sort of go somewhere where they won't know, and they have to find their way home after that. And literally, it's kind of like a Star Trek Voyager Lost in Space sort of story. We don't know if that's going to happen. It all depends on if because a lot of these shows, even they've released recently that The Acolyte was planned to be 2 or 3 seasons in a movie. So they never release their full plan for a show when it first comes out. So is this a 1 series thing, or is they going to continuous until they keep going, or is this like a 3 points thing where each season has a different part of the story getting back home? So until we know what that sort of till the end of this season and how well it does, we won't really know what to too much expect. But it's good for now. It's enjoyable. It's not something like, as I said, I might not go out of my way to stay if it was a 2 a.m. sort of thing for me, or 3 a.m. for you when like Mandalorian went online and all the other shows. Would I stay up specifically for it? If I'm awake, I'll watch it, that's for sure. But if I'm not, I won't go out of my way for it. But I'm definitely enjoying it.
That's good. I think we are on the same page there, and I will add this. You brought very interesting points, and what could happen is, case A, they go back home at the end of the season. Case B, they do exactly what you said. They don't want to lead other pirates there, so they go elsewhere. And season 2 will be finding a way back home without bringing the others with them.
Or
that
just
could be that.
Space Adventures.
Yeah.
So like, have you ever seen the show Space Cases? It was kind of like a Star Trek show for kids.
Not really. I was into 2 types of show. Either it's a cop show or it's a superhero show. That's the kind of shows I was watching.
It was a kids show where they were lost and one of those where they were lost in space trying to find their way home and just going on different planets and different adventures and discovering, which this show could very easily turn into. This could be a whole setup for that, instead of doing that usually intro episode where someone hits a button, they get and something happens to them and they get lost and trying to find their way back. It's a choice to get lost in space and their choice what to do next. But Space Cases they had the original Black Ranger. It had a couple big actors in it, or at least 2. I'll send you a preview for it or a link to it after this. But yeah, it seems like it can be one of those shows. And it's just, I hope it doesn't go on too much like a kid's show. I hope like it does, if it goes on more than 1 season, that it goes on and it does get a little more adult, because with throwing all the animal aliens in, like some that we've never really seen before, and just it feels a little bit kind of like I see the people's backlash against this going, your new Disney show, your new Disney Star Wars, and it's just a bunch of animal characters. And it's just like, yeah, it feels goofy. It does. But it's working. It's just that they're doing a bit too much of it. I think that's also to market toys, which things are nowadays, is you have all those cute little aliens and different alien races, you make figures out of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of a waiting game and just seeing how the show, because the show is so far good, but it could all, depending on how they tell the story, it could all be ruined by the final episode, and you're like, no, if there's a new season, I'm not watching it or something. But it's just a waiting game and wait and watch.
Yeah. Um, do you want to add more before I take a bit the floor?
Not that I can think of at the moment, unless you say something which makes me think of something.
Perfect. Well, again, I will repeat what I kind of already said. I have no issues with this week episode. I just had a blast. I felt like the seeing the parents talking with each other and their reaction to what was going on was relatable if you were a parent. I believe, like, I think the parents felt like different characters, and it was interesting to see their dynamic between each other. They also fixed the plot hole of the guy not escaping earlier. The action was entertaining, and the station blowing up was very fun. The liar questioning the droid about the kids was very entertaining because, like, he is a liar, and it's like in full display that he sees through stuff, and it was a very interesting scene there. Um, Another thing, the kids realizing their parents um analyzed the money was kind of cool. I enjoyed the lore around that. The liar not trusting his friend, it kind of made sense because the friend backstabbed him. The friend thinking the liar kidnapped the kids was hilarious. The liar figuring out the all backstab them was cool. Glasses girl being more intellectual made her stand out more. The kids forcing the guy to talk was great, and the action was really cool. And the guy being a manipulative liar was very entertaining, and I'd say so far this was my favorite episode. Um, I think it deserves a solid um, 10 out of 10. What about you?
I'm going to go with an 8 out of 10, mostly because it was a good story, good everything. And one thing to that mentioned it also was when you were talking about the parents reacting and seeing how what's his name, the main kid's father was sort of almost look. You couldn't tell what he was thinking. Was he blaming himself, or was he thinking about everything that's going on and how the planetary government was reacting to saying we can't go outside? They left. How'd the ship get in the first place? Like he's like, is he putting pieces together himself from the inside, or is he just blaming himself and wallowing in self pity? But it's actually showing an actual connection to the show, whether or not we see how what his true thoughts are. Again, the whole animal thing, and it felt very. I understand being child show going to a child show, but they do have to. So that whole questioning Jod and whatnot, it just felt very much like a one of those kid movies and stuff where the kids are the main heroes and stuff, questioning the bad guy. Whether he is the main bad guy or not isn't yet to be seen. Or if this is not, there's no main bad guy, it's just a continuous story. But it's definitely good and it's leading somewhere. And the droids' protectiveness of the kids and responding to Jod was also an interesting, it's a good view and an interesting reaction of how protective he is. So I can't again. This I don't think I'll be giving. I can't really give this show perfect scores until the end to know how it all ties together. But this is definitely better than the previous two episodes because there was much more going on.
Yeah, yeah. I felt like they well used the 30-minute ish of this
Although
week episode.
the one thing that bothered me was when Jod was from before when Jod was escaping with the droid. Why didn't he activate him? If he would have said, "I'm here to rescue you to bring you back to the kids to the ship. Help me fight these guys." The droid might have helped, but he kept he just deactivated him and sort of left him and just sort of was carrying around this huge. But it might have also been if he's walking around with the giant droid.
He's more discreet by not reactivating it earlier.
Like he said, going in the bigger area, you become nobody than standing out. So that could have been why, but it still just kind of felt a little sort of wasted, but that's me overthinking.
Yeah, and like it was disabled in the first place, so maybe he was thinking even if he reactivated, maybe the droid won't really help out that much,
Or
either.
might attack him or something.
Yeah,
Who knows? But we'll see how he reacts to him, or if he knows, or if the droid sort of pulls up information or discovers information.
yeah. So I guess, except if you'd like to add more, I guess it's like the closing moment. That was
Yeah.
short, but I think that was the point because it's a short show. Like we cannot
Do you
talk
know
an
if there's
hour
any
about it.
more dual episodes coming out?
Dual. Oh, like the first two?
Yeah, because usually they. But with how short it is, I don't know. If anything, they'd probably do the final episode, do 2 episodes, if that.
I don't think so. I think the final episode is like January 13th or something like that. So I think we really get only one episode a week until then.
Well, my only thing is still no Hondo and Naka. And if they don't do it, that would be a big down on the show. That would take all the pluses and bring them down to zero. Because you can't have a show about space pirates and not have the OG space pirate.
Okay, well, that's being told. So coming next week, episode 4. I think it's like Tuesday. I
Yeah,
believe
it's
it's
going to be
Tuesday.
Tuesday
Yeah,
at I think 6 o'clock my time, 7 o'clock your time,
yeah, something like that.
or it's
Um,
either 6 or 7 our times, or 7 or 8. It's one of those two right when you're about to head out.
Yeah, when I got work. So we will review this either next Thursday or next Saturday, depending if we can or cannot. That's the idea, and I'm looking forward. I like this show. I think
I enjoy it.
this year has been great when it comes to show. If we forget Knuckle existed, if we forget uh, the Acolyte existed, if we forget Halo existed, okay, there's a lot of bad shows, but uh, there's also a lot of great shows, and I think Skeleton Crew is one of them. And we are out.